Hello and welcome to the Jet Fuel Podcast. I am your host, founder, editor-in-chief of nyjetfuel.com, Matt Barbado, joined by only one co-pilot today. We've got Adam Zalonka. Be sure to follow Adam. Great to talk to you again. I know we didn't get to do a show together last week, but how have you been?
I've been worse. I've been better. I'm all over the place.
I'm
doing all right, man. It's cool.
Sort of like the New York Jets, and it's been. I mean, Jets looked like one of the worst teams in the league as we expected in the first 2 weeks. And Adam, let's just start with. I mean, how shocked are you that I am about to say the New York Jets are riding a 2-game winning streak?
I'm definitely a medium level of shocked, just because you got to take into consideration the two teams they beat and what the Dolphins really look like as an offense.
For sure.
And at the same time, I don't think anybody came into the season thinking that the Jets were going to be able to string 2 wins together at any point in the schedule.
Right. And, I mean, that's what's weird. That's what's crazy about it. I mean, everybody sort of was thinking, can the Jets win 2 games all season? And they've already won 2 in the first 4, and that's going to have the tanking crowd a little upset. But if you're just someone who wants to see this team win, you certainly cannot complain with a 2-2 start. And I'm not going to start pushing the playoff button here, but the AFC looks pretty mediocre. I mean, it might only take 9 wins. I'm not saying the Jets are going to do it, but hey, to be sort of in the middle of the pack in a mediocre conference, it's not as bad as I think a lot of people expected. But this Jets-Jaguars game was just wild. The Jets ended up prevailing 23-20, but it was a game that certainly had a lot of ups and downs, including in overtime, where it seemed like this game was destined for a tie. So, Adam, the Jets come away with the win. As we've mentioned, the schedule is not good, right now in this stage of the year. But just looking at Week 4, would you say the Jets won this game or the Jaguars lost it?
In a way, Matt, both of these teams lost it, and one got away with winning it anyway.
I agree.
Between the fourth quarter and overtime, neither of these teams looked like they wanted to win it at all. It was competitive for a little while, and it was competitive in the opposite way, where both teams were sort of equally bad for a little while. The Jets had a couple of very unfortunate plays, the kind of play that you would expect from this kind of team if you're looking at it in the preseason, the kind of play where Bilal Powell falls down on a route and Josh McCown's pass sails over his behind and into the hands of a waiting Jaguars defender, that kind of a play. Overall, I'm going to say that the Jaguars lost it as far as their offense, which fell completely flat at the end of the game, and they punted 3 times in a row in the overtime, whereas the Jets at least managed to get themselves in field goal position. And Chandler Catanzaro is making most of his field goals this year, which is the thing I didn't think I was going to say. I'm very surprised after he put up like the most atrocious-looking preseason I've ever seen from a kicker, or at least training camp in preseason, right?
That was one of our big surprises was that Catanzaro beat out Ross Martin.
Yeah, Martin looked like the better kicker all summer. But I will say that the Jets didn't lose it entirely. They didn't win it entirely. Their defense showed up for the most part in a sort of bend but don't break kind of way. They gave up a ton of rushing yards, but not as much as they gave up to the Raiders or to the Bills. There are little moments like that of improvement that you can see. And ultimately, I mean, for a while at the end, I was rooting for a tie. The Jets haven't had a tie since 1988. It would have been 29 years almost to the day since their last tie had the Jets had actually tied Jacksonville on Sunday. And I'm into those history kind of things, Matt. I like them a lot. But no tie for the Jets. The Jaguars have never had a tie in franchise history, and that would have gone down as the Jaguars' first ever tie.
It would have been fitting in this game because this was such an emotional game to watch for me, because it was just like the Jets looked good for a little while. And then, I mean, if you were telling me up 20-10, the Jets certainly won this game, and they're about to go for the kill shot, that final touchdown to make it a 17-point game. And the play that sort of changes it all is the swing pass to Bilal Powell. And, McCown got rid of the ball way too soon. You've got to wait on that kind of play. Yeah. You either got to wait for your, intended target to get past the line of scrimmage or just throw the ball away. He throws it way too early. Powell has no clue where the ball is. And all of a sudden it's a return the other way, 80 yards for the Jaguars. And that totally puts the game on its head. And then just when you think the Jets have a chance to ice it again, like you mentioned, Powell slips, falls down. That was sort of the story of the day for Bilal Powell. Slipped and fell down and wasn't touched on his 75-yard touchdown run either.
So you're right, yeah.
It was just it was such a herky-jerky, tumultuous ride. It's like in stages I was like, wow, the Jets really went on and earned this one. And then in the late portion of the second half, I'm thinking, well, the Jets pretty much blew this game. And it's here's what I'll say. Here's why I say the Jaguars lost it. Why on earth did they go away from the running game, especially during overtime? Blake Bortles threw the ball 35 times in this game. The Jaguars as a team rushed for it 39. So listen, I'm one who preaches for offensive balance. Not in this case, because Blake Bortles was really bad in this game. 15 of 35, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. He averaged 4 yards per completion. And we usually laugh at Josh McCown's paltry number in that category, but 4 yards per completion, that puts such a cap on your offense. And it's not like they had to throw. They were running all over the Jets. That's where I argue that the Jaguars lost this game. I thought the play calling, particularly at the end of the game, was pretty bad. The Jaguars were never really in a we have to throw situation. This game never really got that far out of hand. That's what I thought was crazy. I thought the play calling by Jacksonville was terrible. And, on the other side, I thought John Morton called a pretty nice game for the Jets.
I totally agree with you about Jacksonville as well as John Morton. As far as the Jaguars, Bortles' numbers just are usually pretty laughable. When you talk about preaching offensive balance, you definitely want that in the beginning of a game to establish the run and establish a couple of good throws in the first quarter, or the first half. When you're looking at the fourth quarter or in some cases overtime, such as this game, it's been working all day and what hasn't been working. And that's up to the coaches to recognize, you can run Leonard Fournette a few more times. He was getting pretty, and he ended up averaging, I believe, 3.6 yards a game, carry, I should say.
Right.
It's, not beautiful numbers, but consistently he was getting a couple at a time, and it was helping. It was helping Jacksonville. You had Chris Ivory, the former Jet, had some good runs. So they should have run more, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their play chart now from the overtime period. I guess it wasn't as bad as I had thought. But it just seemed like I think the Jaguars threw 5 or 6 times. It was pretty even in overtime. I didn't know that, but just looked it up. Yeah, it's just I just don't think there's a reason to throw the ball with Blake Bortles 35 times a game.
Yeah, I think it was also fourth quarter too, a little bit.
Yeah, it was just skewed. It was weird. I don't know. It was such a weird game. It was such a game that both teams just looked so inept at times. It was a very weird outcome, and the Jets will certainly take it. They'll take the 2-game winning streak. Todd Bowles will certainly take it. I think his seat's getting a little cooler right now. But Adam, who was your high-flying Jet from this game, from the Jaguars' victory?
My high-flying Jet has to be Jeremy Curley, who ended up with the most receptions of any individual on this team with 5 catches. He only gained 37 yards on those. He didn't get into the end zone, but I was really happy to see Curley catch a couple of key plays on third down. He was targeted 5 times, so that means he caught everything that was thrown to him. And a couple of those were on third down. I was really impressed. I was really happy to see Curley back in, a contributing kind of role in green and white. I think this has been his best game so far in the 2017 season.
I'll take Elijah McGuire. I'm going to stick with the offense. I think Locke Edwards, our boy, I guess. I think I got the Locke Edwards train started in week 1, like my MVP of the game for the Jets. But I'll give him credit.
70-yard punt.
I'll give him credit for executing that fake punt that led to nothing because the Jets completely mismanaged the situation again. But it was listen, it was a ballsy call. I'm not sure I would agree with it, but I guess when you're the Jets and you're not really expected to do much anyways, why not?
Right.
It was pretty well executed. And granted, the Jaguars did screw that play up too because they didn't really have a gunner on the outside. It seemed like they were all going for the block. But hey, ballsy call. But I'll go with McGuire. 10 carries, 93 yards, had a 69-yard touchdown run. I think he was actually the more impressive back. I thought he showed a lot of really, really great speed. I think he's the fastest back on this roster. And I'm not going to start the trade Matt Forte talk, but he certainly – the Jets didn't miss Matt Forte on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know if Matt Forte would garner any real trade rate being an injured running back over the age of 30. Right. And they're not going to cut him mid-season either, just for the sake of it. They'll have him on the roster no matter when he comes back from his mysterious kind of injury he's dealing with. Turf toe, yeah, the most mysterious of the football injuries. I've never suffered it, so I'm sure it's bad. But Bilal Powell and Elijah McGuire both had good games. You have an excellent choice there with McGuire. I would agree he was slightly more impressive because the majority of Powell's yards came on his 75-yard run. And McGuire also had a 69-yard run, but that wasn't his only big shot play where he had some nice cuts or broke some tackles, but avoided some tackles. He also had 38 receiving yards on 2 catches, 2 targets. So yeah, he might be one of the most impressive draft picks out of this 2017 class, the 6th rounder that our Max Marcillo, who's not here tonight, Max Marcillo got to interview and write up a nice piece about him back in the spring. He's great. We're all going to be rooting for him. And, Bilal and Elijah seem like they're both young. Matt Forte's time in the NFL is not long. And you'd think maybe Powell and McGuire can make a good running back duo in the future.
Yeah, I mean, Powell, I like both of them. I thought they both – and I did a piece on the site yesterday just sort of analyzing the running game, breaking it down. What went right? How were the Jets able to pound the Jaguars for 256 rushing yards? I mean, that's insanity. The Jets had 267 rushing yards through the first 3 games this year. They break out for 256, and a couple of those, a 75-yard run and a 69-yard run. Obviously, those play a role. But the Jets' running game was impressive all game long. I think they took advantage of an over-pursuing Jacksonville front 7. I thought the offensive line did a really nice job too. Could Powell and McGuire be a duo of the future? It's possible. I mean, we got to remember Powell is no spring chicken. He's going to turn 29 in just a couple of weeks. His birthday is actually October 27th. Oh. So Powell is not. I think people, because Bilal Powell hasn't been used a ton and he's never really been the featured back. I think people just kind of think, oh, he's only 26, 25, and it's that's not really the case. He's kind of old too, and he's actually he's entering the final year of his contract in 2018. So I'm curious to see what the Jets do at that position. I definitely think McGuire is a fixture, though. And both of them, I mean, they both had a really nice game, showed some great vision. A lot of their big runs came via cutback lanes. So I thought they both had really, really strong games. This Jaguars recap with this kind of broad, but I think interesting question as we've reached the quarter pole of the 2017 season. Are the Jets actually better than we expected?
I'm going to say no on that, and this is why. They had a schedule that was front-loaded with pretty weak teams. We didn't know how good or bad Miami was going to be coming in with Jay Cutler replacing the injured Ryan Tannehill, but Miami has turned out to be the worst offense in football, and it didn't take a lot of effort for the Jets to hold them, I guess, to 6 points or 7 points. And then they play Jacksonville last weekend, and the 0-4, atrocious, dismal, always Cleveland Browns week 5, which we'll talk about very soon, of course, that matchup. But the Browns, they're good at giving everybody their first win. Week 3, they give the Colts their first win of the season, and week 4, they give the Bengals their first win of the season.
Right.
And they're not losing to world beaters. They're losing to weak teams like Indianapolis and Cincinnati. My point here is that the Jets have a lot more to come in the schedule. Just because they're 2-2 through 4 doesn't mean they're on pace for 8-8. Not the way they're playing. They have a lot to shore up still. They haven't played any of their NFC South opponents, and the NFC South is one of the best divisions in football. It still is, even with warts and all on certain teams. All of those teams are capable of beating the Jets, and we would expect them to, just objectively and logically. So I don't think that they're actually better than we expected. It's nice to see that they were able to pull out an overtime win, or in the case of last week, dominate a divisional opponent like Miami. But if you're listening to this on Thursday, you'll be able to also check out on nyjetfuel.com my article, tentatively titled "The New York Jets Rate Poorly Among the NFL's 13 2-2 Teams." There are 13 2-2 teams. Nearly half the league is very average.
Mediocre.
Mediocre. That's just like I think we were sort of saying the same theme this time last year, Matt. But it's come up again that the Jets, I mean, not just the Jets, but a lot of the teams in the NFL are really mediocre. And the Jets are not just mediocre. They're below average for a couple of reasons. I sort out the 2-2 teams in this article based on a couple different ways to rate them, different methodologies from different websites that are very noteworthy and trustworthy. And a lot of it has to do with the teams you beat and the teams you lose to. So that's my argument here. They've beaten Miami. They've beaten Jacksonville. Those aren't the kind of wins that get you into the playoffs necessarily. They've lost to a surprisingly good 3-1 Buffalo Bills team. Whatever. Okay, that's a division game. They got blown out by Oakland, who's now 2-2, and they've come back to earth a little bit, but even before Derek Carr got hurt. My point here is really, of course, you can read the entire article where I articulate myself a little better. But the short answer to Matt's question that he asked me like a year ago is no, the Jets aren't really better than we expected just based off their 2-2 record.
Yeah, I agree. I just, and here's what I'll say. I'll say the offense has been better than I expected. To rush, I don't care who you're playing. To get 256 rushing yards in a game is impressive. I think Josh McCown's actually been okay. I think he has definitely kept the Jets in games. He hasn't really thrown them out of any, unless you want to count the Raiders game, which really, that was sort of garbage time turnovers.
Yeah.
The offense has actually been okay. It's not going to score 30 points a game. It probably won't even score 20 points a game against the rest of the schedule. But I've liked what I've seen. I don't think it's been as bad as I think a lot of people expected, and that's encouraging. Defensively, it's just, I think a lot of people thought the secondary was going to be the problem on this team, and maybe it's because they haven't really played a high-powered passing game other than the Raiders. They have played sort of 4 weak passing teams if you look at the schedule, including the Browns. But the run defense has been really, really bad, and it was really bad again last week against the Jaguars. And now the Jets rank 29th in run defense. And I know this is something that we talked about, I think, on the last podcast we all did together where, the Jets have sort of been able to hang their hat on being really good against the run. And they haven't been they've been awful against the run this entire year. So there are some portions where I say, okay, they're not as bad as I expected, but that doesn't mean they're good. And I think the schedule after this Browns game is really going to turn on them. As you sort of chronicled, they do have the Patriots in 2 weeks, which I don't know. Maybe the Patriots aren't as indomitable as we expected. They certainly don't look the part. But yeah, the schedule's been nice to them. And this was something we sort of discussed in the preseason where we said, first 5 games are interesting, and then after that it could be ugly. So I'll say the Jets are better in some areas, but this is not. Don't get your hopes up that this is a playoff team. Don't get your hopes up that this is probably even a 6 or 7 win team. At this point, I think the hope is for 4 or 5.
Totally.
And I know that won't work well with the tanking crowd, but that's where we're at 4 weeks into the year.
Totally with you there.
Let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. This was a game I think a lot of people thought would be just a dumpster fire of a matchup. I think a lot of people expected both teams to be winless or with 1, maybe 2 wins on their records, but the Jets are they can win this game. The Browns have looked terrible. I think a lot of people expected the Browns to not be as miserable as they've been, and they've sort of just morphed back into Browns mode where, like you said, they've lost to the Colts, they've lost to Cincinnati. They've looked terrible all year. This is not going to be the matchup of the week, I can tell you that much, Adam. But if you're looking at this game, what's the best unit on the field? Is it the Jets offense? Is it the Jets defense, or vice versa? What do you think is the best unit in this game?
Wow. I don't know if I should blame you for asking the question, or just
I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame.
Well, I think we're going to tear a hole in the space-time continuum answering it because, remarkably enough, I think the Jets offense is the best unit out of the 4 you're giving me to choose from. The Browns defense isn't it. Not by a long shot, not with the way they're giving up points like crazy to teams like Cincinnati, who have looked remarkably bad in other games. Even though the Browns are likely to have first overall pick Myles Garrett for the first time in this game, which we should consider. that doesn't make the Browns defense threatening at all. It hasn't been in too long. The Browns offense, although DeShone Kizer has been promising at times, they are far from a complete unit. He has almost nobody to throw the ball to. And Duke Johnson and Isaiah Crowell are mediocre running backs. They're not going to ever look the way that Powell and McGuire looked a week ago for the Jets. And then, so if I'm going to defer to the Jets, I'm being weirdly optimistic just writing off the Browns. But come on, it's the Browns. So Jets defense versus Jets offense, what's playing better? Honestly, it's so I don't know what's wrong with me right now. It just doesn't feel right. I'm saying the Jets offense is actually going to be the better unit in this game because the Jets defense is yet to really show anything of substance apart from holding the Dolphins to 7 points when the Dolphins you know what I feel about the Dolphins offense.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They're terrible. It was not an impressive feat as we look back on it. The Jets offense, if they can continue to do what they did against Jacksonville, which was break off big plays, if there's any team in the NFL whose defense is susceptible to big plays, it's Cleveland, in my opinion. They're maybe the Patriots, the way they're trying to hold their defense together at the seams right now. They stink too. But the Browns stink. The Jets are favored to win this game. And the way the Jets win this game is by limiting the turnovers and breaking off a couple of big plays the way they were able to against Jacksonville, like the Powell rushing touchdown and the McGuire rushing touchdown. So in this game and in no other NFL game in the history of the league or the sport, the Jets' 2017 offense is actually the best unit involved. What do you think?
You've kind of talked me into that. I mean, I've been thinking more and more about the defense, and I was going to pick the Jets' defense.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's fair.
But I think about the run defense in the front seven, and it's just not very good. And it's like, yeah, you know, they shut down the Dolphins, which I don't think anybody expected. I didn't pick the Jets to win that game. I picked them to beat the Jaguars, but the Dolphins, I guess, are just awful. I mean, we just have to sort of, you know, that's sort of the reason why the Jets' defense looks so good. Because even with Blake Bortles, the Jets just couldn't stop Jacksonville's running game. Even when they were loading the box, it just never worked. I just think this front seven's kind of bad.
They're not playing good.
Teams are both awful, and I know the Jets' record wouldn't indicate that, but yeah, I'm going to go with the defense because I think the secondary's been better than we expect. And I think, you know, if the Jets are going to win this game on the road, keep in mind their only 2 wins have come at home this year. They've looked awful on the road. I think the Jets will have to get a couple of takeaways, and that's very possible against a rookie in DeShone Kizer. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to a turnover margin. I think the Jets are capable. And you know, this offense just hasn't looked as great on the road. It hasn't looked as efficient. So I will. Again, this is a very tough choice. I'm going to go with the Jets defense. I think there's the defensive line talent plus the secondary playing actually well, and you know, obviously the safeties, the rookie safeties, Jamal Adams, Marcus May. You know, those are all encouraging prospects. So I'm going to lean the Jets defense, but not by much. Speaking of leaning and not by much, Vegas is leaning on the Jets. This might be the only week all year the Jets are favored.
Yeah.
Jets are a 1-point favorite. That's not saying a whole lot. It's practically a pick 'em, but a 1-point road favorite against Cleveland. I don't think you would have pegged the Jets to be a 1-point favorite on the road in any game this year. But Adam, what do you think about this spread? Is it too high, too low, just right? What's your feelings on that?
I love the way you phrase this question. You know you're a Jets fan if you're looking at a 1-point favorite and saying, is that 1-point line too high?
It might be.
What do you want to be, a half point? Or you think the Browns are the favorite at home? Usually, well, the way my dad taught me how this works is that you give 3 points toward whatever team's at home.
Yeah.
So on a neutral field, the Jets would be a 4-point favorite. Does that sound about right? That they would win 24-20 or 20-16 against Cleveland in a kind of messy game?
At home, I guess so.
I'm saying on a neutral field.
Oh, on a neutral field, I don't know. I mean, that's
hard to say. There are no games actually played on.
I guess they're about a 4. This line, I feel like, might be right on.
This feels like a trap game to me. This feels like the kind of game we can dissect the hell out and say, oh, it's going to be close, and then you see the Browns just storm the field and win by 20 somehow on a overrated Jets team. You know what I mean? As far as Vegas odds,
the Jets almost lost that game against the Browns last year on the road.
This is true, and they got to play them on the road again now.
That game. They had a horrible first half.
Can I go way heavy on the Josh McCown factor here and say Josh McCown knows this team and knows this defense, and he's going to just pick them apart because he used to play on Cleveland a year ago.
There is familiarity. There is familiarity.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to lean too heavy on that.
Josh McCown revenge game. Except you could probably say it's the Josh McCown revenge game against 8 other teams in the league.
He needs to exact revenge on every team that ever cut him or traded him.
And that's a quarter of the league, so.
Right, yeah, that's a lot of teams, Matt. As far as your question about is this line too low, high, or just right, it seems just right because I feel like it's going to be a close game in a bad way. And 1 point, if you gave it to Cleveland, if you gave it to New York, 1.2 points, it's the right ballpark. Matt, you there?
There he is. Thought we lost you.
Did I cut out? Oh, I'm sorry.
What was your point?
I'm sorry. I was just concluding. It was a good thing you didn't miss much. I'm sorry I cut out, but I was just concluding by saying that this seems like the kind of game that's going to be close in a bad way because of how messy it's going to be. So if you give 1 point to the Jets or 1 point to Cleveland or 2 points either way, it seems like the right ballpark. So I think it's just right.
Yeah, I think the Browns should. I don't know. How can I say the Browns should be favored? I think this game should be pretty much a pick-em, and it pretty much is with a 1 point spread. Yeah, this is. I guess the only way this could go is if the Jets get bet up and they become a 3 point favorite on the road. But I wouldn't lay. It's a weird spread because I wouldn't lay points on the road with the Jets. I just wouldn't. I don't care if it's even a point. I just wouldn't do it. I just don't think it's good gambling. I also don't know how many points I would take on the road for the Browns. It's just I feel like I'd have to get like 7 points to take the Browns because they're just so awful. And Deshaun Kaiser is clearly kind of going through the ropes, not having nearly as much success as Deshaun Watson. So I think the line's just right because I don't know. I think Vegas doesn't really know what to do with this game either, and I'm curious to see how many people actually bet it. Because this is just one where I don't see value on either side.
If you want to know what ESPN's got right now on the matchup predictor, which I think is just people, I don't know if it's people voting or, you know what it says is ESPN's Football Power Index.
Yeah.
It surprisingly leans Cleveland 58.8% to 40.9% right now.
That's substantial.
That's substantially in favor.
That's a substantial difference.
Very big difference. Yeah, we're going to see one 0-4 team win on Sunday because the Giants and Chargers play each other. And the other New York team that's actually 0-4, not the New York Jets. Unless they tie, I don't know. But that's at least one. And maybe the Browns will be 2. It's hard to say. But, you don't. The whole argument on my most recent articles, don't get too hyped up on this Jets team. Even though they're playing what looks like the worst team in football right now. Kaiser, he's a promising prospect. I want to go back to him for a second. He's I think he's going to have a good career, personally. Right now, it's his first rookie September and first rookie October, and he's surrounded by not much. So he's got to go through some stuff.
That's why I kind of think the Jets are going to win this game, and we'll get to our predictions in a little bit. But, yeah, Kaiser, the Jets do have trouble against mobile quarterbacks. They seem to never be able to get him down. They seem to never be able to, rein him in the pocket. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kaiser busts out in this game. But I don't think the Browns have any weapons that can expose the Jets unless and the Browns on paper have a good offensive line. So they could control the line of scrimmage. They could run the ball with Crowell and get Duke Johnson open in space against, Demario Davis and Darren Lee, who have been pretty susceptible covering running backs this year. So that's how I can see. I feel like it all comes from the backfield pretty much. I don't know how the Browns beat the Jets by airing it out. I don't think it's possible. I don't see this game becoming a shootout. I think the Jets are going to try and play a good road game, control the ball. I think the Browns are going to try and play a good road game at home and control the ball and run. And because the Jets have not been able to stop anybody except for the Dolphins, who are terrible and might be as bad as the Browns. So this all came at home. So I think there's a drastic difference in the Jets at home and the Jets on the road. And I think that's sort of a trend across the NFL now where these teams really have a hard time playing on the road. So who is your Jet to watch on both sides of the ball, Adam, as we get into our predictions?
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt. It was tough for me to pick an offensive player. I was thinking about going to Eli McGuire, see if he keeps up what he's been given in terms of looks by this offensive coordinator and the play calling. But I'd actually like to focus on tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Ooh.
He's my pick for the offensive Jet to watch this week. In his 2 games since coming back from his suspension, he's caught 9 balls on 10 targets. He's had 77 yards off of those. That's pretty good for 2 games, considering how most of these receivers on this Jets team look. And I'm talking about the wide receivers more so than the tight ends. McCown is comfortable throwing to him, and if you read any Jets beat writer in the metropolitan area, they've all done a Seferian-Jenkins story in the last couple of weeks about how he's gotten past his alcoholism, he's opened up, he's put on all the basic stuff you're supposed to do: lose the weight, put on the muscle. He's trying to reinvent himself. And Cleveland Browns in fantasy points, which is indicative, in my opinion, of also real stats, they're 31st in the league. So I will make a confession. I claimed Austin Seferian-Jenkins in my fantasy league today, and I'm starting him this week. I'm putting all my chips in this. I'm all pushing all the chips forward. I'm all in on ASJ
on my 4-0 team. On my 4-0 team, my perfect team. I also have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper tied in there, aren't great options either. But yeah, I really like the Seferian-Jenkins pick.
Thank you.
Because the Browns they haven't stopped tight ends in a while. I feel like this has been a continuing narrative. I mean, they just gave up 2 touchdowns to Tyler Kroft.
This includes Tyler Kroft. Not even Jesse James from the Steelers back in week 1 ran all over them.
Much worse tight ends have feasted on the Browns.
Yeah.
So this is a game, if John Morton has any brains whatsoever, the Browns don't play well against tight ends. It doesn't seem to matter who it is. Seferian-Jenkins is one of the more talented tight ends in the league if you're to rank them 1 through 32. So I agree. I think there's going to be a healthy dose of ASJ. My offensive Jet to watch, well, I really like the ASJ pick. I'm going to go Jermaine Kearse. I think the Jets, he started the season really well. And by really well, I mean like 5 catches for 60 yards, but sort of hasn't been. Exactly. And he sort of hasn't been as much of a factor the last 2 games, had only 4 catches for 17 yards last week. I think he's clearly the Jets' #1 receiver. And the Browns don't stop tight ends. They don't really stop anybody. Their passing defense is not very good. I think this could be a game where Josh McCown actually has a decent performance. The Browns currently rank 25th in the league against the pass, allowing 241 passing yards per game. And they've played, Jacoby Brissett. They haven't played a ton of great teams, as we mentioned. So I'll go with Jermaine Kearse because I think the Jets' passing game is going to be important in this one, and I think they're going to need to create some big plays through the air. How about defense?
All right, hold on to your seats, everybody, especially you, Matt. You know who my defensive player to watch is going to be? Everyone's favorite guy.
Mario?
Darren Lee.
Ooh, I was close.
You were very close, and I considered Demario Davis too. Demario Davis, we should not forget, is 3rd in the NFL in tackles. He's tackling a lot. That doesn't mean he's making all the best tackles or that he's making the most tackles for loss, but he's making a lot of tackles.
He's chasing everybody.
He's chasing everybody and catching them from behind a lot of the time. Darren Lee. So, for instance, last week, Demario Davis led the Jets with 8 tackles against Jacksonville, and Lee had 7. You know what else Lee had? He had a tackle and a half for loss. The reason I'm calling out Darren Lee in this segment is that he's frequently bad, but he's occasionally still flashing the first-round talent because he was a first-round draft pick just 2 Aprils ago, or maybe it was May, I suppose. It was definitely May. But Lee, there was a very nice play in the 4th quarter where he brought down the ball carrier, whether it was Ivory or Fournette, escapes me right now. On 3rd down, behind the line of scrimmage in a clutch moment, I thought, hey, I forgot this guy's got some potential. So he had a tackle and a half for loss last week. He did have a sack like week 1. And if the Jets are going to force Deshaun Kaiser to make some risky throws and force him into some situations in week 5, first they got to shut down Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson on the ground. So that's what makes Darren Lee especially important.
Adam, for my defensive player to watch, I'm going to first preface it with a question.
Okay.
How many sacks do the Jets have this year?
How many sacks did the Jets have this year? 4 games?
Yep.
Oof, they had a few early on. I'm going to go with like 4?
6.
6 sacks.
That is
That's better than I thought.
30th in the league. The only teams behind them are the teams that have only played 3 games. Miami and Tampa.
That's not good. Oh.
So, not good at all. I'm gonna pull a cop out, Marcel. I'm gonna say, can I get a pass rush, particularly along the edge? I want to see these edge rushers actually make an impact. I don't care who it is. If it's David Bass, if it's Julian Stanford, if it's Jordan Jenkins, if it's Dylan Donahue, get to the quarterback. They weren't rushing Blake Bortles a ton in this game. They only sacked him once. They hit him only 6 times, and he dropped back on 36 passes. I want to see this Jets pass rush get to the passer with more regularity. 30, 35% of the dropbacks. I'd like to see there be some, actual pressure on Deshaun Kaiser. Fluster this rookie. Get aggressive. The secondary can hold up. I want to see Todd Bowles blitz a little bit more. I want to see more aggression from this defense. You know what? You're 2-2. You're playing for a chance to get over 500 and win 3 games in a row. Something nobody expected this team to do. If you lose on Sunday, you know what? That's expected. The Jets stink. They're tanking. There's no problem with that. No one's going to be upset if the Jets lose. I think they will be stunned if they win and get to 3-2. Nobody saw this coming. Play aggressively. Go all out for it. You know what? You're not going to make the playoffs. No offense. You're not going to make the playoffs. But you can really, really protect your job in the future if you can go 3-2 through the first 5 games. It shows growth. It shows they're not one of the worst teams in the league. That's for sure.
Yeah. I like your pick, Matt. Even though you're being a bit of a cop-out Barbado right now in place of Marcilla, it's sort of got to fill in for him. But you've got a very good point. And I think the worst news I've heard this week is that Dylan Donahue's on the injured reserve, that they had to put him on injured reserve today. What's that?
That's right. I missed that.
It's disappointing because Donahue has had some impressive moments this season in his rookie year. He's a 5th rounder out of West Georgia, and nobody heard of him essentially when the Jets picked him in April. I remember you, me, and Max all saying, "Who's this guy? This is who we're trading back for," etc. And he's turned out to be one, along with McGuire, these 2 late-round guys, good contributors this year. So it's disappointing to see him, Donahue, an outside linebacker, a pass rusher in certain situations,
and it happened
to go to injured reserve.
It happened on such a stupid play, too. It happened on that Posluszny play where they got it ended up working out for the team. They got the 15-yard penalty that put him in field goal range. But I think Donahue could have gotten flagged for a blindside hit. So it was kind of a stupid play. But it doesn't. Yeah, he's out for the year, or he's not out for the year, but he's on injured reserve with an elbow injury. So my mistake on that. I got a little too excited.
It's cool, yeah. There's plenty of other guys to call out. There's David Bass. Who's heard of David Bass? I mean, he was in the backfield early and often. I feel like in the
6 tackles, 4th on the team. 6 total tackles. He had the only sack of the game. Which if you had put a pool out there and said who's going to get the first sack of the game for the Jets, and you had David Bass, he deserved $10,000.
You could have won a lot of money. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
there are people, and they need to pick out which people are going to stick around. This is the time to win your job, your starting job. If you're a guy like Josh Martin, if you're a guy like Jordan Jenkins, who although he's been penciled in as the starter each week, he hasn't had a good season yet. He hasn't done anything.
He really hasn't. The whole outside linebacking group has been unimpactful.
Yeah, so I like your pick, man. And it extends to Muhammad Wilkerson. I thought you were going to say Muhammad Wilkerson because I know you called out Wilkerson earlier in the year for not doing much of anything.
Well, you know what? This whole defensive line, I mean, I could call it the entire front 7. It's been dismal. In terms of sacks, though, I'm just scrolling down. You know what's crazy?
What's crazy?
Leonard Williams and Muhammad Wilkerson don't have a sack.
That's pathetic.
But David Bass has 2.
2 sacks out of the 6 came from a guy who's heard of him. This is kind of a point I wanted to make about your offense, your offensive pick, saying that the offense has been surprisingly good this year, way more than you expected at the beginning of the season. That's partly because they brought in Jeremy Curley and Jermaine Kearse at the last second.
Right.
The last-minute moves at the end of the month of August shaped the Jets from, I think it took them from a 1-win team to a 4-win team because of the moves they made, shipping Sheldon Richardson out and getting a good return. Those kind of moves, and signing people like David Bass and all these people
from Missouri Western.
We didn't spend all of July and August, looking through the roster and talking about David Bass.
No,
and here he is leading the Jets in sacks.
That's great. Good for David Bass, but for God's sake, Leonard Williams, Muhammad Wilkerson, you've incited me now, Adam. Get a sack.
Get a sack.
I want to see 3 sacks.
Sack the quarterback.
Sacks.
The Browns have Joe Thomas, and they have nothing else on that offensive line. You can get around 4 of those 5 dudes.
Yeah, they'll probably come close, and then Kaiser will run away because he's mobile, and the Jets can't never tackle Tyrod Taylor, so why would they tackle Deshaun Kaiser, who's a bigger version? Let's while we're dissecting this game, let's get to the predictions and wrap up here. Adam, will the Jets get to 3-2?
Sadly enough, they will. It's going to be very, very weird.
The way you just said that. Why sadly enough?
Sadly enough, if you're a tanking fan out there, I'm not going to reveal exactly what I'd like the Jets to do. I'm not going to show my inherent biases. I'm a journalist.
Don't say who you vote for.
Right, you don't say who you vote for. Listen, if you're a tanker, it's sad to see the Jets getting to 3 wins that quickly when some teams in the NFL won't even have 3 wins in December or January.
We're being greedy as Jets.
Look at this.
We're being greedy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with it's going to be a 1-possession game. It's going to be sloppy. There will be takeaways and turnovers both sides. I'm settling in on 21-17 New York Jets. 21, it sounds weird for the Jets because you think, wow, they're going to get in the end zone 3 times and not kick a field goal. That kind of range, 2016, 21-17. That's how I feel this game going. The Jets will go into Cleveland, hapless Cleveland. I'm sorry, but you've got the Indians to root for. Keep rooting for them during the postseason against Beto's Yankees, and just ignore the Browns.
Yeah, that's what Cleveland
Jets win.
Do.
Jets win.
Oh, wow.
Jets. All right, Beto, what do you think?
I'm trying to think, and I'm trying to look this up very quickly. Have the Jets gone into the end zone 3 times this season in a game, I should say, in a game 3 times? I'm trying to look as quickly as I can. I don't think
not the Bills, not the Raiders. They only had 2 against the Jaguars. I think they only had 2 against the Dolphins, right?
I think they've. Yeah, I don't think they have 3 touchdowns in a game yet.
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen against the Browns.
Yeah, and I'm going to pick the Browns.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of thought you would.
I knew all along they were going to beat the Jaguars. That was just a game that, I don't know, it spoke to me. Coming off of this win, an emotional win, a hard-fought win, going back on the road after playing 2 straight at home, I think a young team like the Jets, and I know they do have veteran pieces, but overall a young team like the Jets, it's much, much harder to play on the road. I don't think Cleveland's going to go 0-16. I really do think there's some decent talent on that team. It's just not showing itself. I think Myles Garrett will have more sacks. Well, not will have more sacks, but he has the potential to have more sacks than the entire Jets team combined, the way the season's going in the pass rushing department for them. And I think he'll play an impact healthy. I want to see if the Browns, ease him in, really, put it on the throttle right away. Because if it's Myles Garrett against Kelvin Beachum all afternoon, then it could be a long day for the Jets. But Garrett will provide a boost. If nothing else, you have to game plan against him. I think Deshaun Kaiser makes enough plays. I think the Jets have a couple of turnovers in this game. I just don't think the positive performances at home, I don't think those translate to Cleveland. I'm going to take the Browns. It's going to be an ugly one. I'm going to say 19-17.
Okay.
So there you have it. Adam's got the Jets winning. I've got them losing. What do you guys think? We want to hear from you as always. Be sure to tweet at me, at Adam. You can follow me on Twitter at RealMattBarbado. You can follow Adam at Adam_Zalanka. And you can follow the Jet Fuel, obviously. You want to follow the site. You'd be silly not to, at New York Jet Fuel. And Adam's going to have that article that he's been hyping up published tomorrow on Thursday, I believe. Is that the plan?
That's the plan. If you're listening, it's on Thursday, then you could probably look at it right now.
You might as well go to nyjetfuel.com, check out the homepage, and Adam's article will likely be there.
Yeah.
So
Get on
there
the
you
homepage and stay there and click around.
Don't leave Jet Fuel. You are in good hands here. And yeah, we really enjoy. Adam, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
As always. And yeah, when we come back next week, the New York Jets could be 3-2. They could be above 500, and that would be unprecedented. I don't think anybody would have seen that coming, but it's very possible. And I think that's sort of the premise you should take away from today's show is, yeah, while we're split on who's going to win, I think the Jets certainly can win. Adam thinks they will. We don't know what Cop-Out Marcelo thinks, but I'm sure I have a feeling he's going to pick the Jets too. So
Cop-Out Marcelo would pick a tie. They both win.
You can't decide.
Yeah.
So there you go. We're truly split on the Jet Fuel podcast. We want to thank you very much for listening. Please, please, please follow us on SoundCloud. Subscribe to the show on iTunes. You can get us on your phone whenever we release a show. How great is that? I do it on my long commute to the city of Chicago from the suburbs. It's awesome. Take us on the road. Take us wherever you go. And this has been the Jet Fuel Podcast. Thank you very much again for listening, and we'll talk to you again real soon.